And I have warned the panelists already that if there's something that you really want to challenge, then you should do so, right? The reason that we have these additional guests on the stage today, of course, is because as the technological environment becomes more and more complex, we find important, indispensable roles that didn't exist before, and existing players or new players come in to fill those roles, right? So for me, actually, I was very happy to learn about OneLayer, what OneLayer does in this space, and you will get an opportunity to introduce it. But it's not something that I was really familiar with before. It's certainly not something I'd ever thought about before. We had the comment earlier that, for example, the promise of edge, the promise of IoT, the inevitable convergence of IT and OT are all things that we've been talking about for years. But it takes accompanying, enabling technologies and solutions to really unleash those things, right? And what we've got on the stage today is 3 different organizations that have a different relationship to the story of IT-OT convergence. One of which, Diogo, who's just presented, is more a consumer of the use cases and value that it unleashes. And then we've got Nokia and OneLayer, who are helping realize and secure and make the sort of IT-OT space, particularly when we talk about private networks and 5G and OTE and all those things, secure and operable, right? So before I speak anymore, because actually they're not here to hear me, they're here to hear you. Would you like to take turns introducing yourselves? Diogo, you've already done that. So Liron, perhaps you go first, please.
Yeah, sure thing. Hey guys, my name is Liron Ben-Chorin. I'm leading system engineering at OneLayer. And what we do at OneLayer is that for the cases of private LTE and 5G networks, we provide a security platform as well as a device orchestration platform. And the reason I'm here to talk about OT and IT convergence is because this is let's say, a great type of network that has a lot of benefits and also has a lot of use cases where sometimes we see IT applications alongside OT applications that may, as mentioned, demand unique type of security solutions. So I'll be here to describe a little bit more about our methodology and what we've seen working with gas and oil companies that were their priorities in terms of their cybersecurity concerns and what we've learned so far. So thank you.
Hello, my name is Jaime Laguna. I represent Nokia. I am part of the global business development team. I am responsible for oil and gas and mining globally. Also very excited to be here with OneLayer, with Petrobras, with Schneider. All of them, obviously, usual suspects in this oil and gas business. Nokia is also part of these usual suspects, believe it or not. We are not selling phones. We are not selling the Snake video game anymore. We should include that in our private wireless. But one of the key topics that Nokia, as you probably heard in my presentation yesterday, is about private wireless and connectivity, but what is beyond connectivity and how IT and OT needs to, again, work together. Yesterday I was saying that I have been hearing about this fight forever. There's always a gap. It's not a gap, it's an abyss, right? But we need to make these 2 groups talk to each other. And we are trying to do that with technology that will help both worlds. Mission critical is the real game here. We understand that as a telecom company. But we need to hear, and not necessarily just to follow the, oh dear customer, we will do whatever you want, but it's more about understanding the requirements, using technology and using all the elements. For example, Nokia is working with OneLayer to obviously look into the cybersecurity piece, into the security of the networks as well. But we need to also understand from the customer perspective, what are the use cases, what exactly are the processes that these technologies are going to enable. And again, it's a conversation between IT, OT, all way long, but define responsibilities, accountabilities, and make things happen. So I will stop there for a minute.
That's great, thank you. He's already introduced himself. And I'm done.
Okay.
Okay, so let's start with the both of you already alluded to this a little bit, but let's set the scene a little bit more. There's a reason, historically, why IT and OT have been separated, right? And I guess from my perspective, the simple explanation is, since the dawn of the information age, IT has been increasingly important. But when we're talking about oil and gas and other physical industries, the crown jewels are the physical assets, right? And so there's a reason why OT's always been separated. It's like, okay, IT boys, go and play, right? We're taking care of the stuff that really matters, that cannot fall down, right? Now, of course, what we realize in this new era is that to get the most out of those physical assets, we need to do things with the data that we couldn't do before, and that's why those two worlds are coming together, right? Now, but there is decades and decades and decades of culture and history and tradition and ways of operating and risk aversion or risk mitigation, right? The reason why risk management is so important in oil and gas. So my question, maybe you can start, right? What is the key cultural change that needs to take place in order to really get over this hump?
Correct. First of all, I believe is the technology adoption, and that technology can help in both worlds. Because yes, IT is always associated to maybe to the PCs, right? To the laptops, to Windows environment, right? And the OT is, no, I am serious. I talk about exactly what you said, right? Operations, critical, mission critical processes, applications. And we need to have this barrier because IT is always associated to enterprise, to the, as I was saying, Windows, PCs, etc. But now technology is, from the IT side, is being available and getting all the benefits that can help the OT side. And that's how we need to explain that these benefits that are in the OT can be used in the OT side, or sorry, in the IT can be used in the OT side, and also vice versa. But we need to make very clear and explain that the technology can help both worlds at the same time, and that IT solutions, which maybe is the misconcept, like again, telecom pieces are considered part of the IT, are reliable enough that will support the OT applications. That's why when we talk about private wireless, private 5G, we are now highlighting that that technology is mission critical and that can help in the OT side, and now can benefit both groups delivering the same objective, which is exactly optimization, secure optimization, enhance of the productivity, etc., but helping both worlds at the same time.
So I would agree with everything that you said. My question would be, whose role is it to give that message? Who has to tell them?
Well, in part is the vendors that are providing this technology, but also I believe this is a dynamic conversation between the consumer, the user itself. But we need to explain, we need to do this evangelization of explaining how things work. Now, you were saying very clearly, avoid POCs, right? Because the proof of concept is maybe the artifact, the tool that we typically use to say, well, you don't believe me, let's try it, right? But now by having this dynamic conversation, we are able to say, look, this technology is reliable enough to support what you need as a user, right? And yeah, I also agree, proof of concept, maybe we need to avoid that, but we can demonstrate efficiently how technology can work. But it's a little bit of, from our side, to do this evangelization of explaining how technology that is considered IT can work in OT and can help, again, with the objective.
So let me pass it over to you, because of course you were just talking about some great work that you've actually done around this space, right? How did you go about making sure in your organization that all of these different stakeholders, coming from very different perspectives, had a common goal?
Well, oh yeah, I forgot. First, your first comment about how this tool was used to live separately for decades. I think that the answer is very simple because it was possible to live this way, but it's not more possible. Okay, us business continuity is necessary, but it's not sufficient. You have to find a way to add value to our business. So this way, you cannot apart IT from OT. Okay, and now to talk about what we are doing in Petrobras in order to define a common proposal. As I said during my presentation, we have to define a clear governance that starts with the business demand. We have to have very clearly what is the business need that should drive OT and IT effort. Okay, I think when we talk about OT and IT convergence today, it's very common to see these two worlds like they will be separated for 5-10 years from now. And I think it will not happen, okay? I cannot see IT and OT in the future, in the near future, as we see today. I think that is the point, okay? We have some perspective today that will not be valid 3-5 years from now. So we have to think how it will be in the near future. And I think that OT professionals and IT professionals, as we have today, will not exist anymore. And here comes up what we are calling in Petrobras the digital engineer. This is a new figure that would incorporate knowledge from OT and IT in order to create value to the business. That's it.
I think you may be a little visionary with your time frame. 3 to 5 years seems pretty aggressive, right? You'll remember from Val's presentation, there is the chasm between the early adopters and the sensible people. And those of us who are always thinking about the future tend to be a little bit premature, right? In how quickly these things happen. Oil and gas changes slowly, but the direction of travel, I think. Lauren, I want to bring you into this a little bit more, right? Many things will change, right? And as I said, the thing about the digital world and an increasingly interconnected world is that all those additional nodes and all those additional relationships and all the additional devices leads to new requirements, right? So from your perspective, what are the things that, what is changing, right, in this space, and particularly when we talk about the need for all of these devices that are being connected that weren't there before?
It's a great question, and I very much agree with what my colleague said here earlier. I will say that from my experience, most of the organizations I currently speak with, they're not yet having this mature approach regarding this convergence that we speak about. More often than not, what I face is these two separate silos still, right? Where IT and OT are leading the advancements in the network separately. And well, from my world, where I mainly deal with the private networks that may end up having both IT and OT applications, that's usually when it becomes a very challenging, it's not easy to be able to find the right persona that you spoke about, because they still view things separately, they have different methodologies, and having that one figure that you just described is often non-trivial. And I think in many ways, because of that, what we need to see evolve is how we take certain methodologies that we know for a fact that are working and are effective, and make sure that we can implement them in these new environments. One of the things that come to mind when I speak of it, for example, is that in the OT world, one of the most famous, let's say, security approaches is called zero trust network access, where your argument or the way you view the network is that it's already been breached, and you treat every single asset as if that asset is a threat, as if the user is a threat. And one of the things that were done in order to overcome that, for example, was to properly segment the network. And to make sure that we follow different methodologies where we split the network into different levels of access, and we determine which devices can communicate with which devices. And I think this becomes more critical as we see this convergence occurring, because we're going to have use cases where the same type of network might end up carrying traffic of computers, tablets, phones, and in the same time, we'll see PLCs, meters, critical infrastructure, and making sure that these devices can physically not communicate with one another, so that if, let's say, your computer was breached, there's no way to further make that breach, even worse and gain access to critical components of your network, is going to become even more critical than it is today. Because it's already a great challenge, but with those two technologies merging, it's going to be more and more of a challenge.
So let's build on that a little bit more, because so I come from Schneider Electric. We are acknowledged leaders in OT cybersecurity, right?
Yeah.
But what you're talking about there now is building out that level of cybersecure provision, right, into the kind of connected IT device mix, right? So how is that different? What is it that you have to do that's different?
I think, I always tend to say there's a lot of things you need to do in order to have your network properly secured. It can be about alerting for incidents and malicious activities. It can be what I said earlier about segmentation. To me, everything always starts with good visibility. The very first thing you need to do is to understand which applications, which use cases are running in your network. And that's always the first building block to be able to achieve these more advanced capabilities.
So this is the classic asset management program.
Yes. I mean, at the end of the day, you want to know, be it IT, be it OT, be it a private cellular network. If you have a device up and running in your network, you need to understand what's its vendor, what's its type, what traffic it's been sending out, what is it communicating with, maybe where it's geographically located. All of this information that allows you to then do root cause analysis when you have an incident, where you want to better understand what's going on, becomes much more critical. So to me, it's always visibility first, achieve that, and then talk about how to segment your network, how to do other things.
So in the same way that Joe said, the future engineer or operator is a new digital persona, right? Who's able to kind of bridge the world of IT and OT from an operational perspective. You're also talking about a new form of cybersecurity management that has to cross the same barrier while keeping the barrier in place, right? So is this also a new competence?
It's a great question, and I think the future will be a lot about integrations. It will be a lot about the example that Diego just shared with us, having a centralized environment that can collect data and analytics from be it OT, be it IT. So, whatever it is that you care about, whatever is your critical business use case, you'll need to be able to analyze that, both for efficiency purposes as well as for security purposes. So being able to build the right tools that will support you with that journey is going to be a challenge. And I'm not sure everybody got the right answers for how to do so exactly, but I believe this is like the way forward. This is how we're going to pave the future here.
Indeed. Tiny, maybe you can build on that a little bit too. Like, what's Nokia's, this whole risk management thing, right? In the same way as a few years ago, you would talk to customers, owner-operators, oil and gas, like, no, we're never putting anything on the cloud. Why? Security, right? That's changing, thankfully. Are you seeing a similar thing with this space?
Yeah, exactly. And I was going to answer that this is a new competence, right? But it is part of how technology is evolving. Is evolving in a manner to explain how segregation or segmentation of networks is possible even under the same platform, right? We are not talking about you have a control network, you have a corporate network, you have a voice network. All of them are running from a different cable, right? So that's how you separate. Now you can do this efficiently under the same platform. And that's how maybe it's hard to explain to a person that doesn't understand that it's possible to be done like this, right? That's the challenge that we have.
Yeah.
That's why I was keep saying about the evangelization that we need to do to explain, look, I am segregating the networks even under the same platform, but I can do that is a new competence, and technology is let's say, has the possibility to do that, right? And it's secure, it's mature, it's not a guinea pig scenario, it has been done. But now it's part of it. So it's a new competence that has been developed. And from our side, we see it very simple because we have been doing this forever, right? In the telecom world, carriers and all the networks are done like this.
Mm-hmm.
You segregate traffic. You give privilege to a specific device, to a specific user. Now you apply that in an industrial environment. And that's how you can maybe use the same infrastructure for multiple services. And each one of them will have their own quality of service. Each one of them will have their own profile. And then you can secure that with and the security is natively already in the solutions. in the telecom solutions, but then on top you can add more layers of security. So now you can protect this layer.
Thank you for that. I'm going to change shift the topic a little bit, and Joe, I'm going to come to you. There's another aspect of this. No, okay, it's all intermingled. We're talking about the way that data needs to be marshaled and managed in the IT space, in the OT space. You have to keep very careful control of what crosses that barrier or doesn't cross the barrier, right? But then there is another new world in the IT-OT convergence, which is the world of open automation, right? Which is another way that we are encroaching, we can say, in some way, down into the lower levels of the architecture.
Yes.
What's your perspective on that? You still have it.
Okay, I think open process automation is probably the most radical movement that we have in the automation industry since the ISA pyramid in the 70s. Okay, so I think that the OPAS will confirm the appearance of this digital engineer, because the OPAS there we have all the new IT technologies really embracing the automation system. Okay, so all that known protocols from IT guys now they are going into the automation system. So it's a disruption. So that's why I'd say that OT, as we see today, will not exist again, like we see today, because field bus, all the traditional protocols that support the automation networks today, and of course we have very old plants that will continue to operate for decades, but we have to assume that we are facing a very critical transition moment. Okay, and on my point of view, OPAS is one of the greatest symptoms of this transition. And in a few years from now, we will confirm or not this kind of new profession we are discussing here.
So you heard it here first, right? Diogo has made a prediction about the rate of change and the nature of change in the industry, right down to the fact that the very fundamentals of how we work is going to change. And with that, I think it's a good time to bring in the audience and see if everybody agrees. And I'm hoping we don't. So, first of all, is there anybody out there who's got a question on anything that we've talked about so far? Or is there somebody who wants to push back on this opinion?
Challenge.
Somebody want to challenge the panel? Somebody want to get into a fight? Okay, yes, thank you. The warrior.
I am Yusuf from Sokak, Turkey. So I believe that OT and IT agents and these roles should be separate now. I don't think in near future it will be together, because IT guy just sends a Windows update from 10 to 11 to a computer on the field, but OT agent never updates Windows without get approved from vendor, for example.
Yeah.
That's just a one simple example.
Okay, so great challenge. That's a great challenge. Somebody want to respond to that?
I think it's the reality. You're right, and in Petrobras we have the same thing. But what has to change in this perspective, in my opinion, is that if we really want to create value to this kind of industrial plant, this operating model is not sustainable anymore.
That's also, I agree. For example, we do really cooperate with IT as OTT. We provide them data, we calculate, heat exchanger cooling, and the data scientists in IT, they predict some future and the results, and also give us back, right back to PhD, for example, historian. Even we give them historian data, they make some calculations, and we sometimes write back to DCS if we need.
Yeah.
So that cooperation definitely we need always.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that
The line in between is really difficult.
yeah.
That's the challenge, I believe. Sometimes it's your responsibility, my responsibility. That's the challenge.
Yes, you know what I think? When we have this kind of operating model that is basically a very transactional, okay, from IT and OT,
Yeah.
you don't have the right ownership for the people. Okay, the IT guy just configure or provide the data solution, as you said, and the OT guy just receive that solution and bye-bye. See you in the next demand. Okay, but it's not the model that I see sustaining the real transformation of the industry. The real transformation, from my point of view, will require a more integrated work where IT guy could really understand the reality of the plant. That's the turning point, okay? And the OT guy, on the other hand, really understand that technology they need should be provided by IT. So it's a completely different mindset.
I totally agree on this.
Oh, you're supposed to be arguing with us.
I mean, both teams has software developers, both teams
Yeah.
has business analysts, project managers.
Yeah.
No, you're right. You're right. Let me extend the question a little bit further, right? So you may remember from the slide that I had at the beginning of one of the slides that I had at the beginning of the day, that what we hear at Schneider and Aviva from our customers is that the highest level of digital capability they want is integrated and autonomous operations, right? Those two words in there are really important. One is integrated, which means that we are no longer operating in functional or disciplined silos, exactly.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the other one is the expectation of autonomy, right?
Yeah.
Which means that eventually everything has to be doable, other than by exception, by software and robotics, right? Is it possible to get there without the kind of change that we're talking about? You want to, I mean, if you please add your opinion.
Today is no, right? The answer is no. It can't, because you have that separation, that governance that is in between. But the creation of this figure of digital engineer will accelerate that and will definitely push for that to happen. But again, is how we go there, how we can get into that scenario. It's going to take time, and there was a comment in the previous sessions about the next generation of people who are going to work in this environment. How we attract these people is by technology, right? By showing that the technology is applied and a digital engineer can be working remotely, not necessarily in a remote location, but meaning in the city where the site is remote. We give the tools to help this person to do their job, but as we are discussing, we'll need to have the right governance to make a decision in both areas, IT and OT.
Liron, let me let you expand on that a little bit, and if you can also just think about it this way, what I just said, right? The expectation is, in the future, there'll be no people on these, right? There'll be no BioWare. It'll all be devices and robotics. What does that mean from your perspective, what OneLayer is doing? What do we need to prepare for a new world of robotic asset management, as an example?
It's a good question, and I think in many ways, also addressing the earlier question here, this separation is very challenging to maintain, and maybe there are some specific use cases where it works because of people that can work together, that can communicate things, where you mentioned data analytics passing from one team to another. But when we think of the challenges that this creates, the lack of automation, right? The fact that you are dependent on people, tomorrow you're going to have that fantastic analyst leaving the organization and everything's going to fall down. Like what you need to build, we talk about building sustainability, right? Making sure that it's not going to be dependent on the ability of a certain team and the way that a certain tool enhances the organization's operation, but rather an entire ecosystem that supports the ability to analyze information, to look at data, to examine it. So I think looking at the future and talking about, I guess tying in everything we spoke about till now, we need to find the right way to have tools in place that will allow us not to be dependent on certain people in order to be able to achieve better efficiency in our organizations. We need to have mechanisms in place that can take that data, parse it, analyze it, produce insights from it, and that is something that can only be done when we have a good autonomous system in place.
Yeah, absolutely. Are there any other questions? This is a real hot topic. Is there? Oh, okay. Usual suspects.
I get the usual suspect here. So a lot of thoughts, coming in. Be careful there. A lot of thoughts coming in my mind, about this, because you see this evolving probably through cooperation, partnership, emerging in terms of organizational capabilities. You see an element of future. And then I think, have we seen this type of thing happening in the past of our industry? And the example that comes into my mind is looking how, data and IT, went to the same journey of IT and OT today, many years ago in the subsurface and wells world, right? So also there you had a separation by the data element, which was done by the business, and they were very jealous about that. Geophysicists, petroleum engineer, very jealous about that model, the data, and IT trying from all the angles to provide them with the capability to exploit them. And then you've seen that over the year, actually, this professional profile of hybrid skills, 70-30, 30-70, whatever it is in every company will be different. But now in my company is one and only, a hybrid professional that works in between the two functions. This is something that you will see happening through the same lines, or is it something completely different? And are we talking about something completely different here? So, no solution, just thoughts that came to my mind hearing you guys.
No, I think it sounds like you're playing back to us what the panel has been saying. Right? Any of you want to add to that?
Well, from my side, I think it's accurate what you're saying. It's exactly the same, right? Again, it's the evolution that is pushing us in that direction, right? To have this available for our resources to be there. But again, it's how technology is going to help in this transition, right? But I think we have all the elements, right? The elements are there, right? Now it's just the governance again of what's happening.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, look, this is a very, very big topic, and I think it's very clear that it is potentially and very probably a massive game changer. Will we see the kind of change that we've been talking about globally in the next 3 to 5 years? Probably not, but there will be some places, as usual, that are pioneers, that get there first. If you look at other industries, there are examples of convergence of IT and OT and true autonomous operations that have been in place for a long time, actually. And it's sort of inevitable that will happen to oil and gas as well, right? With that, and in consideration of the time and the fact that we're almost close to the end of this event, I'd like to thank the members of the panel. I'd be grateful for you to thank them.